I think no matter how much time you spend in the US, like I think Latino immigrants are never truly considered to be completely American. So like even though like yes, on paper I'm like American, I definitely don't feel that way a lot of times. And I feel like I've experienced a lot of like as a child, a lot of times like, well, what I didn't realize were like microaggressions, but like even things that are like, where like I was clearly culturally different and like they would think that's weird. So like people would bring up, oh, like did you ever watch this as a child? And I'd be like, no, I've never heard of that. And they'd be like, wow, you didn't have a childhood. For me, it's kind of weird because like at the same time, I don't quite identify as like completely American, but I also don't quite identify as like completely Colombian, because when I go back, like it doesn't really, I'm like, this is not the place that I'm familiar with, like home, like that's not, like it's home, but not really anymore. Like the numbers of like students of color like in like the higher like honors and AP classes, like especially in the older years, is like disproportionately low compared to their number like within within the high school or school at large, and they're actually under investigation for that, like by like the government. So like it's, yeah, so like I'm not making it up.
Wow.
Yeah, but so like when I was older, like I would definitely be like one of the only few students of color and almost always the only like Latino person in my class. Even if I had been friends with somebody who was also Latino but was like wealthy, like I think that would have been very difficult. So I think it's a lot about like, you know, race and class as well, because like I mean, brown, like how can you even like go out with your friends if like they always want to go out to like nice restaurants, like you just can't afford it, you know? I wouldn't say that Brown necessarily has support for like immigrant students in general. Like I think if you think about like immigrant support, I think it's mostly for like the international students. But I think like the BCSC has support for all students of color. So like but that's also like a, you know, a point of identification. Like not everybody who considers themselves Latino identifies as a person of color, but I do, right? So that's been a very good space for me, you know, in terms of like the staff members, and then again, like Dean Almandrez and other people who work here, I feel like are very supportive of me. And well, through my thesis research on undocumented students, like Brown definitely has like very little support for undocumented students. There's definitely not that many like Latino faculty, and like, yeah, they go throwing around this number, like I don't even know what the number is, but like they also consider people who don't identify as Latino, who like are from like Latin America and like only came here like in their older years, like to be professors or whatever, like those people don't identify with like Latinidad in the Latino community. And I think Brown only more recently has made a few hires of like tenure track faculty that are Latino, right? I know a lot of people who concentrate in ethnic studies before, like their advisors were people who are only like visiting like assistant professors, and like those people, like the appointment is only 1 year, right? So like, yeah, so like there's no continuous support. So I think that has been a large issue. I mean, there's definitely no excuses to like why Brown doesn't have a lot of Latino professors, and I've heard that the problem is like worse in the sciences. Yeah, so Brown definitely needs to work on its faculty diversity. Yeah, I mean, I think, like I mentioned, like my academic advisor was like very supportive of like my goals in terms of pursuing a PhD, and like she really, like if it hadn't been for her and like her advising, like she really helped to connect me with like the resources that I needed to be successful. I very much like surround myself in like safe spaces, and I mean, I think like even like within academic environments, like I've never, like I've taken a lot of classes on race, and several classes that dealt with like issues of like immigration. I never particularly felt like that was a problem either on behalf of professors or like on behalf of students. Like I mean, so like I took this one class last semester that was like, it was called the Psychology of Race, Class, and Gender, and like there was this one student who like clearly would say like offensive things, but I don't think she wouldn't say it to me exactly, but like because we would talk about like, we talked about like lots of different things, right? And she just like clearly didn't get it. But like aside from that, I can't necessarily think of any kind of like microaggression, just like the or like, you know, the racist kind of like remarks that people post on like Brown Confessions, and like you know, the very much like the lack of support, where like people just like, a lot of times white students and white faculty as well, like I read this really atrocious like a letter, or like, I don't know, it was like an op-ed written by like a professor in the biology department, where I was like, wow, like this is so racist. So like things like that, I don't think necessarily directed at like me in particular, but I think like, you know, directed like people that I like very much identify with, and like a lot of like insensitivity surrounding that. So I think that uncovered a lot of issues that like people weren't aware of. I mean, I think also President Paxton's response to that was very like hurtful, and like almost like, I feel like it was like, you know, like a white person in power like scolding like, you know, students of color, which I found very wrong. I would say I've had like a positive Brown experience, but I think it's very much something that I was very intentional in like crafting myself. I think, you know, and being involved with the BCSC, and also just the concentration that I chose, sociology and ethnic studies, I think I would say those are communities that I've, you know, kind of like identified with.